My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
SRBMedia. If Terry Neal wasn't the manager of Arsenal, would you have stayed, and why?
Well, it's a bit of a question, because if he wasn't manager of Arsenal, would I went there in the first place?
Right answer. Yeah.
It's a no-brainer, really. It's everyone knows, it's quite from my days at Stoke, that I should never have left Stoke. That was just fiasco. But if I was going to go anywhere, I'd have chose probably Arsenal or Liverpool.
Yeah.
I always wanted to play for Liverpool, but with Shankly. But no, I don't really think, Paul, that people, football people, supporters in general, know really what goes on in football clubs, and it's how Terry Neal. It's strange enough. Years later, when I went to live in East London, I used to drink with him and everything else. He apologised to me one day that that was by the by. How Terry Neal could actually manage, which were then really two of the biggest clubs in Europe, Tottenham and Arsenal. It was incredible, really, how he got them jobs. It was, it's totally beyond me, and it took me back to my school days, and being around people who knew quite a lot about football, and my father and people like Tommy Trainer at West London and people like that. It's just and yet you got these people, and it's happening today. You see them today, and you go, all you do is you say, here we go again. But no, the saddest thing in my stay at Arsenal was I loved the club so much. I loved it from a kid. I played there as a kid when I was playing for West London. I played against Charlie George when I was 13, and it was it was fantastic. And and when I went there, the last time. It was actually the last time I scored in the Football League. I think before, I think it was the last time I scored in the Football League at Highbury when I played for Stoke, and when I was out all night, and then I went there for 18 months, and I couldn't. I see on telly last week that it was a revisited match, and I did have a shot at goal actually. But no, it was tragic. It was the saddest thing was the Arsenal fans. Whenever I go to North London, I don't get embarrassed, but I just think they never see the best of me, really.
But it was the ideal move, and you'd says that like leaving Stoke, joining Stoke was a bit of a shock, but leaving them, it really just come out of the blue, which was again another music reference, because you love Jeff Lynne. Those times where out the blue had come out ELO, were in the pomp. We got Saturday Night Fever, we got Grease, Star Wars, we just got the back end of Star Wars. There was lots of great things, great music, and Arsenal arguably one of the greatest teams in English football, and that midfield, and again the theme is if only, and it's if only Terry Neal would have kept Alan Ball, because you went with the intent and the idea that you was playing with Alan, not to replace Alan, didn't you?
Well, yeah, it was a case of, once I really got over the shock of leaving, because I wasn't even told by Stoke that I was leaving. I was told by Jimmy Robertson, who was an old Arsenal player, and he just called me. He'd been to that Stoke had played at Ipswich. I was injured, and And he called me that night and said he'd bumped into Terry Neal because he was at Arsenal with Terry Neal, and he said they're going to sign you. And I said, well, I'm not for sale. He said, well, you are. So the club didn't even tell me. So, so it was a shock. It was I wasn't at that time. I was just getting over a broken leg as well. I wasn't back to my best at Stoke at that time, and you know, it was as we know by now, my relationship with Waddington was just so out of the ordinary. And so I think by then, though, Paul, it was a matter of shocks. Shocks were no longer shocks. You know, I'd had the England thing with I'd been banned by Ramsey, hadn't I, for 3 years. I had the run-in with Revie, and I was out of favour. You know, I was kicked aside by him again. You know, I'd had the problem with Chelsea beforehand, and now it was it seemed like another day at the office. Really, here we go again. You know, but the light, as you say, the light at the end of the tunnel was, you know, the match against West Germany. Alan Ball had always been my favourite midfield player, along with Tony Curry, and to get to play with him every Saturday was a joy. But you know, the one thing standing in my way was my injury. But and I remember hearing one night, he called me into his office, Terry Neal, and he was in there with Wilf Dixon, and they were talking about the team to play the next night, and Alan Ball weren't in it. And I said, well, is he injured? I said, I haven't seen him in the treatment room. And he said, no, he's leaving. And the following day, I was walking through the corridor, and Bally come through. He hadn't had a shave for a week, which weren't like him. He looked like he'd been on the booze, and he'd been in Blackpool. He looked like he was going to take over at Blackpool, and it was a devastating moment. You know, which should have been an absolute dream, was a total nightmare if you'd have pictured us in the corridor that day. But you know, it wasn't if only moment. But you know, it's just what might have been as well on the football field. Me, him, and Brady, I think would have been the best. They say Ball, Harvey, and Kendall were the best, but and then you know, there wasn't the freeze after that. There was the Bremer and Gileses and people like that. Me and Charlie at Chelsea and whatever. And there was always two in midfield, but as a midfield three, we would have been put down as, and strangely enough, Bally would have been in both of them, which was about quite right.
And the song really that fits into the pattern of things here is Take a Chance on Me by ABBA, a song that you love. And if only Terry Neal would have took a chance on Alan Ball, Alan Hudson and Chippy, what a midfield trio. And I honestly think, because I mean, it's all right, you know, we can look back and we can all have opinions, but I do think that midfield trio would have rewritten English football history.
SRBMedia.
Well, I don't think there's any argument of anyone who knows anything about football. Anyone that's seen me, my form at Stoke, anyone that's seen Alan Ball play for Everton, for England and for Arsenal, and anyone that had followed Liam Brady could argue there's just no, you know, the ability between the three of us, because we were so different in everything we did on the football field. I mean, Bally I were very much alike with the way we played the game. You know, I always look at the five-a-sides. We were like five-a-side players, but Brady was a left-sided player, and he had that left foot, which I think I can only ever remember Jim Baxter at Glasgow Rangers in Scotland having a left foot like that. It was like a magic wand, you know.
Yeah.
So we had everything really, and in that midfield, and the thing is, in my writing, and you know, I think, you know, I've got quite a good imagination. It's I can only imagine what the kind of performances that us three would have coming off the field after an afternoon that us three playing together would have been something really special, you know.
Another great piece of your imagination is your love for film and theatre and the romantic side of Alan Hudson, and you could almost imagine yourself playing the part of a rock star in the film A Star Is Born, and Evergreen by Babs. You can't whack at, can you, Barbara Streisand?
Well, Babs, well, who don't want to play alongside her and be her fella, and you know, I love Christopherson as well,
Yeah,
and that film really did say it all for me, and that was just around the time that I think they made it just around the time that I joined Arsenal, and I remember moving in my home, and that was my song at the time. Evergreen was my song, and yeah, that would have been a film to be in. A Star Is Born.
so that time when you were told that you were going to move and you didn't have a medical at Arsenal, you were injured and Terry Neal didn't believe you, and that really started off on the back foot rather than the front foot, because Arsenal signing Alan Hudson, you were 25, you're in the prime of your career, you were arguably the greatest English midfield player out there. It must have been an Arsenal, if you alluded to before, your dad used to take you down because you used to watch George Eastham, he also took you to Spurs to watch a great inside forwards. And you know, that football club was just ready for Alan Hudson. What did you actually feel like, Al, when you first walked in there at Highbury?
Well, it was the aftermath of them winning the double, and
Yeah,
it was that was a very, very underrated team. They were a fantastic team, the team that won the double. Um, it was a shame. It was a shame that John Radford was gone. I loved him as a player, and it's obviously a shame that Charlie George had gone. Uh, and he had made his mark like Curry at Sheffield and me at Stoke. He'd gone to Derby and you know really made a mark for himself. But it was the Marble Halls. Anyone would tell you that played for us to walk into Marble Halls was very, especially when you've been in Stoke.
yeah,
The Stoke was run down and a backwater club. Um, and there you are, where you started as a kid, as a 13-year-old, and as I say, it was the saddest, the sad thing there was that I wasn't fit, and it was like there was no glitter for me, if that's the right thing to do.
yeah,
I couldn't just walk in. It's like I did at Stoke and make my debut properly. I remember making my playing at Highbury one day when Peter Marinella made his debut as a new George Best, and I was playing for Chelsea, and they were cramped round him, and it was the debut, the big debut, and all that. So there was none of that. It was all, yeah, and when you think that they signed me, and I was a record signing in 1974. And for $250,000, and 2 years later they signed me for less money,
yeah.
and I was a 10 times better player than when I left Chelsea.
Mhm.
So it didn't really make any sense. It just goes to show that how badly Stoke City needed the money to fix that roof. But again, it's just it should have been a dream. It should have been a real dream move. They had the best at one time best goalie in the world in Pat Jennings. Pat Rice was still there. He was the captain of the double winning team. Well, he took over. That Frank was, but he kind of was Pat. My old mate Geordie Armstrong was still there. So Frank Stapleton was there before he joined Manchester United. Super Mac was still knocking them in.
Yeah.
They had the nucleus of a championship-winning team, but it just goes to show that the manager, his inability to be a manager. That they were struggling. They were halfway up the table, and they only need to tinker with a team, just keep Alan Ball, and I could see there being a championship winning team again there.
Because that's all great teams need to do, isn't it? Just buy in one or two players to tick it over, to tinker with it a little bit, to just fine tune it, instead of bringing in an array of different players that you think, oh, I'll have him, I'll have him, I'll have him, I'll have him. And you think, well, how are you going to gel them into to a team? It's quite ridiculous.
I must say that I often wonder why Terry Neal bought me, how it came about, how he planned it, or did he, after the game, was he just having a drink in the players' bar or wherever they were when he bumped into Jimmy Robertson and the conversation come up that my name come up, why isn't Hudson playing?
Millions of people have lost weight with personalized plans from Noom, like Evan, who can't stand salads and still lost 50 pounds.
Salads generally for most people are the easy button, right? For me, that wasn't an option. I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. But Noom worked for me.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom user compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Jimmy might have said the roof fell off and, they're going to sell players. And I don't know if that was what brought the conversation. I'm not privy to the conversation, but I would really like to know how it come about, because it kind of, it's a little bit, I always say, like the old marriage scenario, girl meets boy, fall in love, get married, and then they want to change them, And that was kind of the scenario. Why buy someone and fall out with them? Quite the opposite happened with me at Stoke. He bought a broken down player and turned him into a real player. And now I had the opposite effect on the manager there. It was all. It really does tell you the full story of what went wrong at Arsenal, because it was all about Terry Neal, and that was the way he wanted it. He wanted everything to revolve around him, from sending us home from Australia. It just go to the extreme to get his name in the newspaper. It seemed that it was all about. He even walked about the place as if he was bigger than the club, and there's no one man bigger than any one football club, and if there was, it wouldn't be Terry Neal.
SRBMedia.
Again, a great song. As you'd left Stoke, it had been number one, I believe, and it was falling from the charts. If You Leave Me Now by Chicago, and You'll Take Away the Biggest Part of Me. That lyric in that song, in effect, that's what you and Jimmy did to Stoke. You did take away the biggest part of Stoke City. You then went to join Terry Neal. You then went over to Australia and played a few games in Singapore as well, didn't you? And then you left him again because he sent you home, but he didn't send you home at the beginning. He sent you home, what was it, 23, 24 hours before the team went home. Yeah. So what he was trying to say, God only knows, and what he tried to do with that team, only Terry Neal can tell. But sadly, if Don would have been there from the get-go, I think things could have been a lot different, is my understanding from what you've told me. So let's talk about that Australian trip. How did it go?
Well, the trip was I love tours. I love touring, and there was no bad. It was a little bit different touring with Arsenal than touring with Chelsea, because we were the perfect touring team. We had our own kind of rat pack, and you know what times are going to be like when you're abroad. But what a wonderful trip, Singapore, and then on to Sydney, which was quite fantastic. And that's when I linked up really with Geordie. I was pretty close to Geordie anyway, but that really brought us together, and I was roommates with Malcolm, and but that was a trip that kind of broke the camel's back, so to speak. And I think he was. We were free players. Geordie had done it all. He'd won the. He'd never played for England. He was one of those players that incredibly never played for England. But he'd won the double. Not many people can boast doing that. Malcolm was leading goal scorer. We all know about Malcolm MacDonald. How brilliant a goal scorer he was. And there was me. So it was us three against Terry Neal. You see, it was an ongoing battle with it, and he was watching our every move. And every time he watched our move, we made sure that it was a wrong move. Yeah. So it was like a game of chess backwards. Yeah. And it was the inevitable happened. He sent us home, which was quite crazy. And the oddest thing on that trip was Glasgow Celtic were there with us, and I got to know Jock Stein, the great Jock Stein, very well while I was there, and it was just such an honour to meet people like that. And on one hand you had Jock Stein, and we he even come up to us one day when we were sitting by the pool, and he said, "I can't help notice you don't really get on with your manager." And we told him the story, and from then on we got a little bit closer. But to be on a trip with probably one of the best managers in the world and one of the worst managers in the world was quite something. I think it told the story on its own. Yeah. And again, you wonder, if Jock Stein would have been our manager at Arsenal, what he would have done with that side. He would have. I mean, if you'd have give Jock Stein, Brady, Hudson, and Ball, I think Jock would have. I know what Jock would have done.
So, what actually did you do fundamentally wrong that made Terry Neal send you and Malcolm back home? And why didn't he send Geordie as well? Because you were a trio there, as you've alluded to.
Well, it was, it all come. We'd had a couple of run-ins, and we'd flown from Sydney to Melbourne, and for the third leg, and then this was the last leg, to play one game in Melbourne and then come home. And we flew through the night, and I remember getting into the hotel in Melbourne, and the rooms weren't ready, and we all sat down on a long table. We was all very tired through the trip, and it was about, I don't know, it could have been about 4 o'clock in the morning, 5, something like that. And then the news come along that we were training at about 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock or something. And then I turned around to Malcolm and I said, "Who thinks I'm training? He's got another thing coming." I said, well, you don't do this. I said, we've finished, we've had a long, although I didn't play the whole season, these boys have played a long, hard season. We're on tour. Yeah. What's he want to train for, And I said, I'm going to send down a couple of sleeping tablets from Fred Street, and I'm gonna have a couple of drinks, and I'm going to bed. I'm going to have some sleep. I said, we haven't slept for a day and a half. And he said, good idea, Al. So he's my roommate. And next thing you know, we sent down the sleeping tablets. We ordered a drink. I ordered a vodka and orange or something. He had a gin and tonic. And next thing you know, a message come up that our tickets were ready to get on the next plane the following morning. And then we went in, and we hadn't even unpacked our bags, so we weren't packing our bags. We just went in and we took something out of our bag. We had a shower to go in, we were just going to have a sleep, weren't we? And Geordie came in, and he was screaming, and we had to slow him down. What's wrong? He said, I've just heard. What's gone? He said, I've chased him up and down the corridors. I've chased him into his room. He says, I've told him, if you're going home. He says, I'm going home. He says, it's not right. He said, I've told him that everything that you two have done wrong, I've done wrong because I've been with you. So, but he was too shrewd in that way, Terry Neal. He knew that if he'd have sent Geordie home, that they wouldn't have believed there was something wrong. They would have smelt a rat there, because Geordie was the ultimate professional. He was loved at Highbury. The fans wouldn't have they wouldn't have went for that one, that Geordie Armstrong had broke the rules, because he never got a black mark on him on the whole time he was there, and he was there for about 25 years. So he got out of that one. So he was very upset, Geordie, that he weren't sent home with us. And so, it was all. Let's just say I watched the film the other week, The Irishman, and I thought about our script, and you got people like Jimmy Hoffa. They took Jimmy Hoffa out. I mean, he was very, very lucky, Terry Neal, to come back off that trip. As we know, because there's people over in Sydney that wanted to finish him off.
And also, do you think there was anything to do with the conversation that you'd had with Terry on a previous flight, where there was a bar upstairs and you could only go up, was it 1 by 1 or 2 by 2? It was like Noah's Ark, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's Noah's Ark upstairs. Yeah, I don't know how the elephants got up there, but yeah, he said it was a first class bar was upstairs. He said, and he was just hinting it that us three, He said that, and we could have went up in threes. There weren't a problem, because when we got up there, it wasn't the biggest bar in the world, but there was nothing to stop us going up in threes. He just wanted to be, nasty again, really. And he said go up in pairs, and so Geordie said, "Well, you two go up." He said, "I'm not too bothered." He wasn't a big drinker, Geordie. And Malcolm and I went up, and we came down, and about an hour had gone by, and I took a walk along the plane, and I was talking to Danny McGrain, the Celtic captain, and up came Jock, and I said to him, "You've been upstairs, Governor?" And he went, "No." He said, "Well," because I believe he's an ex-alcoholic, Jock.
Right.
Yeah, I think so. And they didn't drink. I said, "Come upstairs, come on." And so we went back. So I wasn't allowed to go up there twice, because we've been told. So we were there, and I knew what was going to happen. I was having a lovely chat with Jock. I was close to heaven when I'd been on a big Boeing right up high in the sky. I mean, standing with Jock Sim, and he reminded me so much of Waddington. It was untrue. It was like I was standing there with a pair of them, and then all of a sudden, I just see this head pop up from the stairs, and he said, "You do realise you've been up here once?" And I looked at Jock, and he looked at me, and he kind of got the message, Really, is that what happens, And I just said, "Terry, no, I just needed a moment. It's been that long since I've seen a decent manager." And his face was like, and then Jock looked at me and he went, "I don't think you should have done that." I said, "Well, what do you expect me to do?" So that was just enough. So that was kind of the last time I spoke to him before we got to Melbourne, and the next time was when he sent the message along that we were going home.
And then the story broke in the news of the world, but he tried to prevent that coming out as well, didn't he, Terry? And that didn't go too well for him either, did it?
Well, it was we had our own corners. Malcolm knew his people in the press, and I knew my people in the press. My paper was the Sunday People, and Malcolm's was the News of the World, and two good old journalists. Brian Madley was the Sunday People, and Ken Montgomery was the News of the World. And, so he first of all, the first calls we made were to home to say that to be picked up, and because we were coming home early, obviously. And then the second call was I think I told my missus to call Brian Madley and get him to call me. So the following morning, about I think I was in my local pub about 6 o'clock in the morning in the Park Tavern. I was picked up by the daughter of the lady at the Park Tavern at Heathrow, and she ran me straight to the pub, and we did the deal about, because it was big news. There was, it was like it wasn't quite like the Beatles coming at Heathrow, but it was packed, and they rushed us off, and I done my deal, and it was quite stupid, really, because he thought by fining us 2 weeks' wages that he was hurting us, and he suspended us and all what goes with it, and there we were. I got about a year's money from what I was earning at Arsenal for being sent home. So he really, I would say, it was a massive own goal he scored there, and obviously, what hurt me about it was he dragged Arsenal through the mud when he shouldn't have done. It was something that was very trivial. But he did try and stop my piece going into the people. I went up, I'll see Madley, and because I used to spend some time in Fleet Street that summer, I went up to see Madley, and he said, we had your boss in. I said, oh yeah, what do you want? He said, well, he went in to see a fella called Neville Holden was the editor, and it's good old Geordie Neville. He was a lovely fella. And he said, I heard you doing a thing on Hudson. He said, I think I want it stopped. And Neville told him, he said, look, you can't even run your own club, he says. You can't even do your own things right in your own office, so don't come in my office. He said, otherwise there'll be a problem. He says, if you don't get out this moment, he said, I will cancel Hudson's article, and I'll...
To listen to the rest of this podcast, please go to www.patreon.com/SRBmedia, or just follow the links in the description. Thank you.
SRBmedia.
The living room is where you make life's most beautiful memories. But your sofa shouldn't be the one remembering them. The new life-resistant, high-performance furniture collection from Ashley is designed to withstand all the spills, slip-ups, and muddy paws that come with the best parts of life. Ashley high-performance sofas and recliners are soft, on-trend, and easy to clean. Shop the high-performance furniture in-store or online at ashley.com. Ashley, for the love of home.